You are live.
Thanks, Leah. Good afternoon, Napa County. We're in the heart of fire season here, and we have some fires in nearby counties that are prompting evacuations today. So we have a few experts today who are going to help us think through how we can keep ourselves, our properties, our neighbors safe here during fire season and during PSPS season. It's really a critical time for you guys for everyone to check in with themselves and with their community and think through preparedness. So we have some pretty smoky skies here in Napa County, and it's just a tough reminder of what a serious challenge we face during the heart of fire season in this part of California, and how important it is for the public to be our partners in fire prevention. So we have a few guests today. I'm going to introduce them. Give us a wave as we introduce you. Brian Garcia is here from the National Weather Service to tell us about some of the weather trends we're seeing this summer, and also explain some of the terminology that we see a lot during fire season. We're also joined by a very busy guest today, our interim county fire chief, Jason Martin, and he's going to tell us about how you can be prepared during critical fire weather, actions you can take to protect your family and your neighbors from fire danger. We also just we're in the middle of our first public safety power shutoff of the year this week, and Kevin Wachewski is here from Napa County Office of Emergency Services to tell us how you can be prepared for those power shutoffs, for those public safety power shutoff events that happen frequently here in Napa this time of year. So we'll try to answer your questions about fire preparedness. So please drop them in the comments during this session. And if we miss your question, we will do our best to follow up after this session. So to start, let's go to Brian Garcia with the National Weather Service. It seems like we're facing pretty extraordinary fire season, and we have more than 85% of California, including Napa County, in extreme drought condition. Can you help us put this fire season into context, Brian? Is this an extraordinary year? What's making it that way?
Yeah, thanks, Leigh, and thanks for hosting this, and thanks to the community for coming out and attending this. It's great to have everybody here. Yeah, this is really an extraordinary fire season, as we've all seen already up north with the Dixie Fire and other fires. The fuels are extremely combustible right now. That is a whole stacking event over the course of numerous years, and you can actually take it back to our drought in the 2010s. You can build off of that to this point that we've come to now. But really, for our area, it's the culmination of two dry winters, and this last winter being extremely dry. We were something like 30% of the average annual precipitation for the water year. So when we have that, and then the summers have seemed to be starting a little bit earlier. So we're starting to get heat a little bit earlier. So think back to like May and even into early June, we actually had some heat advisories during that time. So when we get the heat and we have very little water, that heat likes to evaporate water out of anything it can. So think of all the vegetation, the grasses, everything like that. That heat's just lifting all that water out of there. And what it does is essentially it's throwing everything into the kiln to dry it out really fast. And so we're drying things out a lot faster this year than we have in years past. And then, of course, we had just enough rain to bring us some nice grass crop, and as well as put some plants in the ground. So we have all this dry fuel out there now, and it's just loaded everywhere. And I'm sure Jason can talk a lot to this, but we just set up the stage for a really wild, crazy fire season this year. And now it's the time where really the key is no sparks. That's really kind of the key. We don't want any sparks, because any spark can really get a fire going and expand it quickly.
Thanks so much, Brian. And CAL FIRE has this wonderful campaign called One Less Spark, One Less Wildfire. So ask Chief Martin. No one wants to be that person that does that thing that starts the fire. What are some things that we need to be aware of with regards to human activity this time of year?
Well, I think there's a couple things that are kind of connected to that. First part is those folks that are taking it upon themselves to create defensible space and trying to do the right thing don't realize where weather comes into play that makes it a bad time to do it. Now, we want everybody to do it, but sometimes they lead into the later part of the afternoon when it is the driest and the hottest. And sometimes just a simple rock strike with a weed eater, a weed whacker, mending fences, and using metallic materials like a hammer and a chisel or something to that effect that can produce a small spark. Because the beds are so receptive, they can create a fire that rapidly can expand. Other things are vehicles. You know, a lot of people kind of forget about that aspect of it, and having your vehicle in good operating condition during the summer months. One, it ensures that it can operate, but two, prevents it from breaking down, catching on fire, or having something go wrong with the axles or the brake systems or something to that effect that generate heat. And since most of our roadways are lined with grasslands, it can also lead to a fire. And then the last part is the recreation that we do. And that's a big thing, because we all still want to try to get out, especially on the back end of COVID, or where we're at with COVID that we are now. And more people are out into the wildlands recreating, which we, absolutely, I hope you do that. But getting there and coming back, usually somebody's towing a trailer. So the tow chains that are used for safety, ensure that they're not striking the pavement. Ensure that the trailer, if you have one, has got good maintenance, and that you've gone through the process of greasing the axles and ensuring everything is in good operating conditions. And then lastly is, if you have a mechanized piece of equipment like a ATV or something to that effect, that you have the appropriate spark arresters on the vehicles to prevent any type of accident that could happen.
Chief, you mentioned safe outdoor equipment. You use a lot of people during fire season want to do the right thing. They want to address that flammable material, clear that vegetation. Any tips on when the appropriate time to do that is, and any resources that are available from County Fire to support some of that work?
Yeah, and I missed the first part of that. I'm sorry I didn't bring you the time. We typically like everybody to get out and mow their weeds or cut their weeds back before 10 a.m. Now, with that, there is a little bit of a caveat. If we're in red flag warnings, no mowing or anything whatsoever, because that's telling us that the relative humidities have dropped out, and or if we have winds, they're also driving out the moisture in the atmosphere. So that's something to keep in mind on. If it is a nice foggy day and it's early in the morning, that is the time to do the work. And you mentioned the last portion of it was what does Napa County Fire have available to you for references? When we go to napacounty.org, Napa County Fire Department, we try to have as many publications, if you could, or references that you can refer to and download as a guide for defensible space. The use of our chipper program within the county that is also it's twofold, right? It's you're going to go out and you're going to cut the materials, but you have to cut them at the right time of the day. And then we're going to clear the vegetation so that it doesn't mound up on the property. So those are two very good avenues in order to reduce the hazards to your home. But you also have to take into account the safety factors. And we ask everybody, especially this time of year, to really adhere to those and have a good plan.
Thank you, Chief Martin. You mentioned red flag warnings. I know sometimes the public hears this terminology, red flag warning, fire weather watch. It can be confusing. So that's why we've invited Brian here to kind of explain some of that terminology. What does that mean? What should the public do when they hear there's a red flag warning in effect? Where can they go for that information about the timing and the areas impacted?
Yeah, great question, Leah. Thanks. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen really quick just to show a couple things for everybody to kind of think about when we have the red flag warning out. Sorry, let's see here, share. And so hopefully you're seeing a web page that say, what does it mean? Can somebody confirm that?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Excellent. So this is actually from Detroit, Michigan's Department of Emergency Management out there, and they did a really good job of putting this together with Weather Service. But so going from the right to the left here, we have outlooks, we have advisories, we have watches, and we have warnings. So the outlooks are really just kind of that, we're doing an outlook for a longer time frame. Advisories, like in the winter, we might issue a flash flood advisory. Essentially, that means there is something imminent or occurring at that time, but you'd really have to put yourself in harm's way in order to be truly impacted by it. So it's more of like a heads up, stay out of this area because there's something going on here. The watch is, hey, all the ingredients for something bad to happen are there. We see them coming down the pipe, but they haven't all come together yet to really build that something. Whereas the warning is really the apex of everything. That's all the ingredients are there and they've come together, they've baked and they've done their thing, and now you can actually materialize something occurring. So in a red flag type event, and I'm going to switch over web pages here. This is our homepage here, weather.gov/Bay Area. And I just want to take you to the our fire weather page here, and I want to show you what we look at within our office for red flag criteria. With my here we go. So this is the red flag warning criteria that we use in office to decide whether or not we're going to issue a red flag warning. So I want to point out 3 things here. One, in the top here, you can see that they talk about 10-hour fuel moistures. So this means that we have to have dry fuels in place. And then here along the vertical axis, you see relative humidities. So that means we have to have low relative humidities, so there's not a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. And then along the horizontal axis here, you see sustained winds, and those have different wind bands. So when we meet these different criteria within this matrix, this is when we issue a red flag warning. Sometimes there might be something going on, like let's say Labor Day weekend and everybody wants to get out and barbecue, and we are borderline red flag. So we're not quite expecting to meet that criteria, but we're borderline. We're going to issue it anyway to give a little bit of that top cover and that almost socio what am I trying to think of here? The societal impacts. There it is. The societal impacts of it all. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, because there is a social component to this as well. If it's dry and sunny and beautiful, the only reason a fire is going to start is because somebody starts it, whether it's purposefully or inadvertently, like what Chief was talking about earlier. So that's the reason we'll issue it, especially when we have societal impacts potentially affecting that. So really the red flag warning is your time to take stock of things around you, know that the conditions are right to carry fire, and that's your time to make sure that that bag that you should have by the front door already is in place and ready to go. You have your go kit, you have your go bag, your bug out bag, whatever you want to call it, ready to go, because in those conditions, if a fire gets going, it has the opportunity to have explosive growth, kind of like we saw during the Atlas fire, even the glass fire, those types of conditions. And that's when you need to have redundant sources of information coming into your home. So you'll have your cell phone, you have TV, you have radio, you should have a NOAA weather radio as well. And these sources of information, as well as know your neighbors, have a good relationship with your neighbors, knock on each other's door and make sure each other's okay, because you're going to get information and you want to share it with your neighbors. And if you need to evacuate, you want to get out as fast as you can. Do not hesitate when you get evacuation warnings or evacuation orders. Make sure that you abide by those and get out. So in long, that's what the watch and warning really kind of go to, Leah.
Okay, those are great tips. Thank you, Brian. Safety tips as well as preparedness actions you can do to prevent fires from actually starting. Chief Martin, Kevin, is there anything you want to add? Brian hit on go bags, making sure that you have redundant sources of information.
Brian hit a lot of good points, and this is the one thing I really like to point out to the audience that we have today, is that all of these things, warnings and watches, it's a team effort. It takes more than one agency to make a decision on what we're going to do. And so we work collaboratively together to make the appropriate decisions. The same thing goes with the public, and the public is also part of the team, and actually one of the more important aspects of when we do happen to have a disaster, right? So we have the preparation, but what we ask is that everybody couples or takes into account the information that's provided to them, and they know their part in that. So as stated, is we have a red flag warning. It's a warning that something could happen, and if it does happen, it could be rapidly emergent, happen quickly. And so there's that part of the ready, set, go. That's our ready. That's when we as a family or an entity get together to have that preparation and ensure that we're ready. Do we have a plan? We have to start asking the questions. Do we have the appropriate paperwork, the documents that we want to take with us that we would need? Our medications, have we secured our pets? Do we know what's happening with our neighbors? Are they in need? Is it gonna take us longer to get them to safety if that happens? That's the time that we just double check that, put fuel in the car, make sure you have batteries for the radios. You have 24 to 48 hours worth of food if you go to a shelter or you leave the area. You have communications, and your family element knows where you're at. So either in the area or out of the area. And those are the things that helps us. So if we know that somebody has moved out of the area in the event that we have an emergency, it allows us to then deal with the fire mitigation aspect of it. And those are really big things. And the big key thing today is it is a team effort across the board.
Yeah, Leah, I'm gonna, if I may, so with the information that Chief Martin shared, and then, to Brian's, when you're talking about the weather stages of advisory, outlooks, warnings, so there's so much information available out there. And to Chief Martin's point, the takeaways from today, being prepared and knowing where to get these resources if and when it's time. So we're going to nixle this stuff out as a county, right? For example, the PSPS event that's going on right now. We don't own the PSPS, right? So we're in the same boat as, residents that are having their power, de-energized. So what we're doing is sharing the resources that we have collected as an agency and then directing residents to that stuff. So really just getting smart on where you can go to get this information. If you're not sitting at home right now with a pencil writing down, the stuff that we're saying to have in a go bag, that's okay. But knowing that there's places like readynapacounty.org, the Cal Fire and County Fire pages, the National Weather Service pages, that when you go to these sources of information and there's an event going on, it will tell you what you need to do. So it's more about just kind of educating yourself on where to go to get the information. I think is really important. That's kind of what I was thinking. And, it's sad with Chief, when you were talking earlier about the, one less spark, there's a lot of folks, especially in Napa County, that have been and grown up in Napa County, they've lived here their whole life. But if you're a transplant to the area, you're like, one less spark. What is that? Why, we can't have fires. We can't have fireworks, all this stuff. Cause maybe you grew up in a place where that wasn't a thing, but yeah, that's a thing out here. So just our climate and our weather and everything, it's so not only do we, the list that you laid out, there's so many different ways that a spark can generate. But again, just going a little further upstream and just trying to think about, is what I'm doing causing a fire risk, whatever it is, what I mean? Because people will find a way to to create a spark, even if it's not on that list you mentioned. So just being aware that that's something that we need to watch for here, and then communicating with our neighbors and everything as well. So I know that's what I was thinking.
And to your point on the one less spark and the recreating and the and outdoors, is they are accidents. But if you have good preparation and you're really keenly aware of what the environment has, we still can recreate within the environment, but we have to take safety precautions and be responsible for what we're doing. That's from a small little fire pit to what we do with our charcoal in our barbecues, to even how do we cook. It's kind of neat to be able to cook outside or do something to that effect. But there is a high level of responsibility that's connected with that. And that's just what we ask everybody to take into account when we're outside or even traveling to and from.
Yeah, we years ago I lived in a place where my neighbors and I, it was a different climate. So before there's any disclaimer, but we would have some bonfires in the backyard. We would do small, little fire pit things. And our one neighbor was really he loved to have big fires. And I'm like, dude, you can't just have gigantic fires like this. And so one of the days I actually brought a hose out there just in case. And he ended up the grass lit on fire a little bit near us, and I was able to use the garden hose. So it's just, if we weren't thinking about what could go wrong, then that could have gotten out of hand. And so I don't know if that's a good example or not, but you just got me thinking about it. So
I think it's a great reminder about knowing your neighbors and helping each other out, being part of a community. We're all in this together and we're partners in prevention and preparedness, right?
yeah.
We are.
Kevin, you mentioned Nixle. The county always nixles out red flag warnings that we get from the National Weather Service. I know the volunteer fire stations literally put out a red flag outside the station so that people can be informed. We throw it up on our social media accounts. Kevin, we both work for the Office of Emergency Services, and we get a lot of questions from folks. I see a fire over here, or I've heard of this fire here. Why didn't I get a nixle about it? Do you want to talk about some of the other places people can find information and what the county chooses, what the county is able to nixle and not nixle?
Yeah, great question, Leah. So there's so much information available at our fingertips now, whether it's social media platforms or third-party apps that are designed to actually monitor emergency services networks and kind of broadcast that information. Nixle exists as an emergency alert system, basically. So when there's the need from an incident commander or a county organization to reach the public for some sort of urgent information or important information, we'll use Nixle to push that out. It's normally because there's some sort of action necessary. Sometimes the action is for people to know that there's no action necessary, if that makes sense. So you might see smoke, and we may nixle out that there's no reason to take alarm because the smoke is coming from somewhere else. For example, a neighboring county, today put out a nixle that there was, the smell of smoke in the air, and it's from a different fire. It's from a different area. So they chose, there was enough feedback from the residents that, hey, we want to know what's going on. So they put out a nixle, said, hey, the smoke is not ours. Thanks for being aware. Normally it's from the fire chief, the sheriff, the CEO staff asking us to send that out. There are, there's lots of people on Facebook right now that are monitoring these channels and pushing out information. The only thing we caution is that if it's not from an official agency, don't take official action if it's not from an official agency. So for example, there may be a discussion. You can log in and listen to communications from a fire response. And there may be a subordinate firefighter that asks, hey, should we consider evacuation? And a senior fire officer says, no, we don't need to do that. But if somebody from the public hears the word evacuation and doesn't know to what context, they may mistakenly think that there's evacuations being ordered, and you can see where that would cause confusion. So Nixle it's not for everything, but when it is, we really want people to pay attention because it's important. So.
Kevin, you're reminding me we have a new communication tool here in Napa County. We're using Zone Haven this summer. We piloted it first during the glass fire, and our Know Your Zone campaign is underway. Zone Haven is about Napa County public safety agencies have come together to establish predetermined evacuation zones rather than doing evacuations ad hoc by street name. We have our evacuation map available at community.zonehaven.com. And we're really pushing the public to go to that website, look up your zone, know it during an emergency. You don't want to be fumbling around on your computer. And a lot of counties across California, you can see right now, are using it actively during their incident response to communicate around evacuation warnings and orders. Is there anything you want to, preparedness is obviously about hardening your home, taking those preparedness actions, about go bags. It's also about understanding that evacuation, communication, and notification process. Is there anything you or the chief could tell us to shed some more light on that for the public? I'm thinking specifically the terminology component and the Know Your Zone call to action.
Chief,
Kevin,
I'm happy to.
first?
Yeah, sure.
You go first, and I'll take from what you don't answer.
Okay, that's probably going to be a lot, but I'll give it a shot. No, so Zone Haven is a great tool. So we were first introduced to it from Napa County during the glass fire. It was used to help map some different areas, and we've, over the past couple of months, our sheriff's office has done a ton of work to populate the program, the software, with information specific to Napa County. So we have the county broken down into zones. And so I'm going to test our technology real quick. I'm going to hit share screen and see. I can't do it. Okay, disregard. Well, so if you go to community.zonehaven.com, the map is going to come up, and the map is not just specific to Napa. It'll show you the whole map of the United States. You enter in your address, and it's going to zoom in on Napa County, and it's going to show you exactly which zone your residence or your workplace is in. And then that zone identifier, for example, I'm sitting right now in NAP E038. Doesn't sound like much, but eventually we'll be able to include that zone information into Nixles to alert people if there's a need for them to take some sort of action in their zone. So on the warning and order piece, just for evacuations, if you do ever see that your zone is in an evacuation warning, that's going to mean that you need to prepare to go. And then as an evacuation order means that it's time to go right now. So those are the only two phases that we will discuss an evacuation in. So that's it. So weather uses a different tiered approach. Preparedness initiatives on other events use different phased approaches. Evacuations are either a warning or an order. And then I'll kind of hand it over to Chief, what I missed, Chief.
So in that, no, you didn't miss anything. Actually, is fantastic for the description of how Zone Haven works. And I would just wanted to reiterate that is part of the plan in the preparation, is knowing that zone, knowing what that actually means between the order and warning, and that preparation. And we get ready when the warning comes in. If there's red flags, we are already starting that preparation as a family element to get prepared for an event. That way, again, a lot of us, our kids may come home from school, our teenagers or what have you. That way you have a track. And if you see the nixles that come out with your zone, then you know exactly what's going on, or you have an idea what's going on. And that's another one of the tools that we ask the public to participate on our team to help us in our mitigation efforts across the board, from what the National Weather Service has to say, what we get from our county OES office and our sheriff's department and all of our partners.
Well, thank you both. I know we need communicating during a crisis is always challenging, so it requires us to have some really robust communications tools, and we're all very excited about the step forward with Zone Haven. A lot of counties are using it to great success right now to communicate evacuation information to the public.
Yes.
I am noticing that I have neglected some of the Facebook comments here, so I want to get to those before we wrap up. We have a question here. Are there tax advantages to help homeowners afford to clear their land, or allocated funding to perform that work? I cannot speak to tax advantages, but I know that we do have some resources in the county around defensible space. Chief, could you speak to some of that, our CHIPPER program?
Yeah. So we do have a program within the county that can assist, and that is the Napa CHIPPER program through the Napa County Firewise, which is a free service to our residents of Napa County. For you cut the brush, we'll come and we'll chip it. And instead of you having to haul it away or figure out how you get rid of all of this dead and down. And you can find that on our Napa County Fire Department webpage, Napa County Firewise, for the application to schedule a chipper. And we've completed 772 residents, or they're asked for services. Currently, we have 134 pending, so it's very popular. So have a really good plan. Pay attention to the rules and how the program works, so that when the chippers do show up to your properties, they're able to chip your piles that you're expecting. If they can't get to them, or they're not set up the way that it's outlined in the program, they will not chip your brush.
Thank you, Chief, for that explanation. We have a question. There's a lot of drift smoke in Napa County today. Where is that smoke from? Can I ask?
I think that's a me question. Yeah. So the smoke that's coming across Napa County today is from the fires across Northern California. Simply put, the red flag warning overnight last night into this morning was for winds coming out of the north. And so those winds coming out of the north drove all that smoke down across our area. And we'll continue to have a little bit of wind out of the north and northeast overnight tonight. It shouldn't be even as breezy as it was last night up in the hills. I think we gusted maybe into the 30-mile-per-hour range up at some of the higher peaks. Should be a little bit less tonight, but that'll keep the smoke in the area. By the time we get into Thursday afternoon time frame, we should see those winds start to shift to a more what we call onshore flow, so blowing from west to east, and that should kick the smoke out of our area for a bit before we see more north winds come in again down in the future. Because those fires up north, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So we'll be dealing with smoke for quite some time from distant source fires. And then once we get fires in our area, hopefully we don't get any. But if we get fires in our area, then of course we deal with localized smoke.
Thanks, Brian. And when we get questions from the public about air quality impacts, we tend to refer them to the Bay Area Quality Management District for that data and those safety tips. Right now, I think we're in the moderate range for air quality across Napa County.
Yeah, Bay Area Air Quality Management District is the official source for the air quality in the Bay Area. One of the sites that we like to use here in the National Weather Service to monitor air quality is actually fire.airnow.gov. And it's a great site, and it shows a lot of the official reading locations. And they'll actually display where the smoke is pluming out to, which is really nice right on their website. So you can kind of see what types of concentrations you might have from the smoke. And then you can actually get the readings from the sensors in the area too.
Thank you. It's 4:30 now, so our Spanish language session is about to start. I will do a quick round robin to see if anyone has any closing comments. Brian, anything you want to say in conclusion?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say in conclusion, of course, thanks for hosting this. Really appreciate it. And please be sure to get to know each other in your neighborhoods, even if you're living miles apart because you're out on ranches someplace. Take that time to get to know each other, because at the end of the day, we've all got to help each other get through these fire seasons. We can't go at this alone. It's a true community effort.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kevin, any closing thoughts?
Thanks, Leah. Just briefly, there's so much information out there. Please, get out there and when we send out these nixles or when people share these weather, sites or fire sites, please go check them out. Get smart. To Brian's point, the more we can learn and the more we can, introduce ourselves to our neighbors, learn about our environment, it's just going to make us all more prepared when something goes down. So hope everybody stays safe. Let us know if you need anything. Thanks.
Thank you. And Chief Martin.
In closing, again, thank you for hosting this, for everybody that is part of today's Facebook Live. Again, it is a team effort, and you're part of our team in order to protect our communities. We do this together, and everybody has a part in it. And the part starts with the preparation, and to both Brian and Kevin's point is being prepared by seeking out the appropriate ways to get information, understanding what that information means for you and your family. Have a good comprehensive plan for when you're at home or not at home, and also include your animals. The large animals is another big factor that we have. It takes a lot longer to get them out of the way, and it's something that we consider when we're protecting a property or life is the large animals. So do your part. If you do your part, we can do our part as well, and we'll do it together as a team. I wish everybody well. Be safe the rest of the fire season.
Great. Thank you, Chief. And thank you everyone who joined us here today. It really shows you care just that you're joining us. We know Facebook Live is not for everybody. So we have some in-person outreach events coming up here in Napa County. There's one in Lake Berryessa tomorrow night, 6 o'clock at the Volunteer Fire Station. And there's another one Mount Veeder on Saturday morning. So find that information on Facebook, share it with your loved ones, share this information with loved ones, and we're all in it together. So stay safe, everyone. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today during this extraordinarily busy time of year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.